Enlightenment in the thinking mind, the mind. You know, when we are born, we don't think about much because we don't know much to think about, right? But as the years go by, we accumulate lots to think about. And we live in our heads quite a bit of the time. And those of us who've been on the path of enlightenment or awakening, the path of spirituality, well, for most of those years that we've been on the path, we've tried to stop the mind, because most of the guru teachers tell us that the mind is something, at least, well, they give us the impression, I think, especially early in our path, that the thinking mind is something that's kind of bad, that we need to stop all thought. So we go around, we meditate for long periods of time, we get angry at ourselves because we're thinking yet again about something, rambling on, getting all, upset about what we're thinking. There's something that, I don't know that it's all that clear. I don't know if most teachers have made it that clear. But to me, I've come to the conclusion through my, listening to various teachers and reading all kinds of books, that in actuality, I can't stop thinking. It's impossible. And it's okay. It's what you think about, I think, is the point I'm going to try to make with this video. As we go through our day, the mind tends to want to go off into kind of like stories. And as I've said before in other videos, we want to go back into the past, or we want to go into the future. Quite often there's something happening right around us at the present time that is disconcerting, hectic. So there's a tendency to go off in some sort of like, if this hadn't happened, or if he hadn't said that, or if she wouldn't do this, or why do they do it this way? And oh my gosh, and you just kind of go off into these stories in your head, and it gets the stomach in a knot. It gets yourself all wound up, and you get lost in this. And this can go on for a long time, where you're caught up in this stuff, this thinking stuff that has nothing to do with what you're actually doing. You can be doing your job, a project you're working on, or you can be cleaning the house or whatever. You could be doing something, and yet your mind is in this place of he, she said, why did this happen, how could this happen, blah 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 blah, and it never stops. Like I said in another video, it's like having a TV on inside your head. And I think when we start noticing that, and we start actually applying our thought to the practical things of life, in other words, if you're doing dishes or working on that project, that you stay with that. As you walk through the house and you find yourself thinking about what so-and-so said about you, and how upset you are, or how this thing happened to you, you start noticing that it's nothing productive that you're doing right now. It's something that is either in the future or in the past that you're not doing right now. And it honestly it gets your gut. It gets into your gut. And it gets you all wound up. For what? You cannot do anything about it right now. If you can do something about it right now, then pick up the telephone, sit down and write the letter, do something about it constructive that's going to remedy it. But to try to solve it in your mind, this is where most of our problems are. We try to solve everything in our mind, try to figure it out in our mind. It'll never work. And so enlightenment, those who have actually become enlightened, God bless them, are the ones who've learned that their mind takes them on trips. It's just that simple. It's really very simple. The mind, the conditioned, programmed mind, takes you on trips. And it gets you absolutely nowhere except into total misery. So break that habit. Break that thinking habit. And the only way you can break it, because it is a habit, it's an addiction, just like any other addiction. The only way you can break it is to notice it, taking you on these trips. Notice it. And just ignore it. Just ignore it. You know, you when you're around someone who's very irritating, or a situation that's very irritating, on some level you quite often can just ignore it. You don't have to listen to it. You know how we tune out our parents? Well, tune your mind out that way. Don't let it do this to you. It's just conditioning, rising up to the surface and babbling on. And you've gotten into the habit of trying to solve your problems with the thinking processes, and it just doesn't work. So what do we fill these time? People can say, well, but it's so boring, you know, no TV on, it's so boring. Well, it actually isn't boring after a while. The more you realize the misery it causes, the more you find it's worthwhile to shut it up. So what do you do with your mind that's so habitually going into the drama? What do you do with that mind? Well, you feel the textures of life. The breeze blowing, the birds singing, the project that you're working on, the dishes that you're doing, the floor you're scrubbing, the person you're listening to. How unique is that to actually listen to them? To just be there with exactly what they say. Everybody's saying, be with what is. Well, it's really the truth. You've got to be there for what's happening. If something is happening that is disconcerting, upsetting, confusing, well, handle it the best you can. Get up and leave, the room, not in anger, but remove yourself from it if that's a possibility. If it's too cold, get a sweater. Do something about it. But don't try to solve it in your mind, because this is what is, I think, causing a lot of the misery. And I think enlightenment at the very center of the whole thing of enlightenment is the mind problem. And it even affects your nervous system. Your nervous system kind of listens to the mind in the knee-jerk kind of thing. And if the mind can be not silenced, because you have to use it for practical purposes, let's face it. But if all this storytelling and all this junk can be noticed and snipped at the bud, so to speak, I really think that more contentment will arise. And you'll actually get all your jobs done. Everything will happen as usual. It's just that you won't be in this ruminating stage. It's rumination. And if you find yourself lost in a story, he said, she said, why, oh me, why me, forgive yourself immediately for it. These are hard habits to break. This is more difficult than quitting smoking or drinking or whatever, quote unquote, bad habits you have. Thinking is a bad habit. Thinking about stuff, unnecessary stuff, is just a bad habit. Well, I'll talk more about this a little later. Thank you for tuning in. Bye.